Hello, good evening. Welcome to this edition of Good Evening Ghana. Tonight is not such a pleasant night because we are beginning our march to the cemetery. At the weekend, the famous Ghanaian musician who died, Ebony, will be laid to rest here in Accra in what is expected to be a mammoth funeral for her. The 21-year-old lady will be laid to rest. So tonight we have come into contact with a lawyer and a scientist. Nana Opong says that he has scientific ways in which he can raise the dead, or he says that there are proven and established ways scientifically of bringing the dead back to life. He says, therefore, that Ebony Rains could come back to life in a very scientific way. We'll be asking him tonight how that happens, and he's put together a PowerPoint presentation that we'll be sharing with you. As he speaks in the studio, we'll share that with you, whether it's true that he can actually, through a scientific method, raise the dead. We'll be asking him whether he has done this before somewhere, and we'll be basically testing the thesis of what he's saying, as we think, sadly, of what will occur this weekend, the funeral of Ebony Rains, which is announced to be in Accra, and with a musical concert as a prelude to that. So Nana will be joining us in the studio to have this conversation with us about how scientifically a human being who is dead can be raised. That discussion will start right here on Good Evening Ghana in the next 5 minutes or so, because for the first 5 minutes, we're going to show you a teaser of our program that's to come next week, barring any other decisions. Our program next week will bring you a full coverage of the conference, the Imani conference that occurred at the British Council Hall last Monday. It is a conference about something that's bothering us in Ghana right now, about sanitation. It was the first time that in a public forum, Joy FM's Manasseh Awuni-Azuri came face-to-face with the chief executive of Zoomlion, a company Manasseh has been investigating for a long time, Dr. Joseph Siawa Japan. Also there was the mayor of Accra and the Minister for Sanitation, the Honorable Kofi Ada. We'll show you a teaser of that one, and that program comes to you hopefully next week, Tuesday, as our full edition. Next week is also Easter, and so we are planning a major Easter program for you on Thursday next week. Let's have a teaser of that. Come back to the studio, and then hear this scientist who has this very weird solution where people who are dead can be brought back to life scientifically. So let's go now to the British Council Hall in Accra. This was on Monday.
Okay. The good thing is that as we speak today, every Ghanaian is concerned about sanitation. Everybody wants to address the problem. I don't think if we didn't have the sanitation ministry, the matter would have come to that level that it's come to today. So having created a ministry, the president has made the right decision and has brought the attention of sanitation to everybody's doorstep. And I've been put in charge, and it's my job to try and bring everybody into the fray, as it were, ensure that we do the right thing, get all the ideas together, and be able to roll out a roadmap to deliver on this agenda. We are set to deal with that.
There is a saying here that there is no two lands, pure or impure in itself. The purity of the land depends on the mindset of the people. So for me, I think if we are able to change our mindset, then these sanitation issues will be solved.
Right.
And then education.
Negativities appears that there is non-action. There has been a lot of intervention. I have given you a whole scenario about liquid waste, and we have excess capacity to manage liquid waste, because that's how we were ranked in the Accra being the 7th dirtiest city, and we are changing the story. So help us to change the story through the intervention and the things that we have done. Enforcement, mentioned by Clotilde Colley, I think that is a challenge. We are working hard towards it, and we need to double up. I agree, we need to double up, and we will be able to double up, because in all the things that we are talking about, with all the plans, if we don't enforce, if we don't whip people in line, I've heard a lot about education. Fine, it's education. But in every city where everything is managed properly, it's about enforcement. If the enforcement authority enforces the law to the letter, you will comply. It is not just about education. We know that what we are doing is wrong, but we keep doing it because nobody is checking us. So enforcement is very key. We have to be talking about it.
I think the main problem we have is when we dispose of waste, the clients don't want to pay. So to me, I think if they can bring a voucher that maybe, let's take Zoomlion for instance, You buy for a whole year. When it's about time collecting the waste, you paste it on your dustbin so that they come for it. Secondly, I think we need to restructure our educational system. If you look at our degree...
Education.
Yeah, our educational system, like our institutions, look at our degree program, there is no specific something talking about like sanitation engineering or those kind of stuffs. And we need to also, in so doing, we can give internship mandatory for maybe a semester to work with a waste company so as to gain...
The point is made. Education has been repeated so many times. So
I would also want to respond to someone who is asking when I would tell the positive side. I must say I'm a journalist and I am very critical of the things I write. And there's a misconception out there. I really do not care so much because I know what I do and why I do it. If you see me from Monday to Sunday, you see me in African print. I took this decision in 2011. I used to wear ties and the rest. I gave all to my brothers and I said, if I take my money and buy a material and let someone source it here, I'm investing in the local economy. I'm giving someone a job. So I would not be happy for a local sanitation company to be overlooked for another company from China or India to come and take that job. That's my principle. I would also not just want to sing praises until I've looked at the whole issue critically. So as journalists, we are trained to be very critical, and just something came up here. Seeing the presentation is very impressive. Lavender Hill, we all complained. But that is not to say we should also not question the cost it comes to the state.
Sometimes 2 years, we are not being paid. When we are not paid, nobody talks about it. When we are in debt, nobody talks about it. When we are doing things for nation and supporting, nobody talks about it. The dredging, 2 years, we have not been paid, nobody talks about it. I think that the private sector, we are creating jobs. We are involving people. We are developing this nation. Let us support them. Let us develop them. And I think we can get far. I think that this sanitation, we have invested a lot. We are ready to solve it, and it will be solved. Thank you very much.
how many people?
Okay, so you should prepare for that. There was an explosive conversation at the British Council Hall. We will show that to you on Tuesday next week in all its great detail. Tonight, though, we are beginning the ceremony to lay to rest Ebony Rains, the famous Ghanaian musician who died. She died sadly in an accident on the Accra-Sunyani Road. And many different kinds of theories have been attributed to her death. It's been a cacophony of reasons, of cacophony of chorus all over the place about why she died, what happened, etc., etc. Now we have approached a man, Nana Opong, who says that he has a scientific solution to the problem of the loss of ebony, that ebony can actually come back to life in a scientific way. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. How are you?
You are not really a lawyer, but are you also a scientist?
I'm actually a scientist before I became a lawyer.
Oh, I see. What's your background in this scientist thing?
In science, physics, a little bit of biology, a lot of thinking.
Okay. So we'll take a break, a short one, very short one. When we come back, we will hear him telling us how the dead can be brought to life by a scientific method. Not by prophecy, by a scientific method. We'll be right back.
Guys, I think we should go to Malawi.
All new What's Up Africa from the warm heart of Africa.
Which kind of warm? It's hot, oh!
What's Up Africa? It's the news, but not as you know it. Watch What's Up Africa every Wednesday and Friday on Focus on Africa.
Be a part of our daily programming for all major social media networks. Don't forget, we are big on your views. Share them on www.facebook.com/MetroTVGH. Follow our handle on Twitter at MetroTVGH. For news, hashtag MetroTVNews. For sports, hashtag MetroTVSports. And for entertainment, hashtag MetroTVShowbiz. Follow our post and join the Metro TV family on Instagram with handle MyMetroTV. And there's more. Find us on our YouTube channel anywhere in the world. It's Metro News and Metro Sports on YouTube, or you can WhatsApp us on 055-425-2525. Visit us on www.mymetrotv.tv. Metro TV, never a dull moment.
Welcome back to the program. You need to take your paper and pen tonight, and we're going to go into some detailed scientific analysis. So the macro theory that we're working with tonight is that death, he says, is curable. It's like malaria, that you can take medicine and cure it through a scientific way. And so I'm going to be asking him a lot of interesting questions, and we'll be showing you photographs as we go ahead of Ebony, whose death has shocked the nation and whose burial to this weekend is heavily anticipated. Thank you, sir. So you were telling us that you were already a scientist before you became a lawyer. Now, tell us about this situation, that death is curable scientifically.
Right. What happens is we are used to thinking of death as the end of man, and that man can do nothing about death. But we look into nature as scientists, and we see that every single day, man has been given the power to resurrect the dead through the process of the dead things being absorbed into the living things. For example, when you and I eat, we don't eat living things, we eat dead things. Meat, chicken, cow, and so on and so forth. And these dead things, when they enter into our body, are transformed from death onto life, and they give us life. So the process is, when there is a small amount of dead into a large quantity of living things, the speed of the living transforms the dead into the living. And so what we have understood is the dead can become alive if they're put into a stream of the living.
It's complicated. I mean, a dead human being, 5 foot 4 inches, you want us to consider it like a dead chicken?
No. Think of the concept of the dead being raised by being absorbed into the living. Different processes happen. When you're eating chicken, you chew it, you grind it, and so on and so forth. We cannot chew, grind, and so on. So what we have to do is use the same principle of the absorption of the dead into the living. So how do we construct a living stream which would allow a human being to be absorbed into that stream without crushing, digesting, or in any way damaging the human? So that system where we create a human being, so we create a system where we put the human being, the living stream, is how we resurrect the dead. So for example, the human being, we can put him in a pool, which is a living stream, and the living stream is life at the speed of light. When the living stream is active and the human being is put into it.
When you say stream, do you mean water?
No. A living stream composed of living cells. It's a special construction, a special compaction.
So like a jacuzzi of sorts?
Like a blood pool of sorts.
Blood?
But it's not really blood. I said like a blood pool. It's like full of cells.
Let me take you back a little bit. When a human being dies, its human being is made up of, as we are told, a soul, a body, and a spirit. Does your thesis recognize that?
Yes. The human being is obviously made by God. The human being has different parts.
Okay.
There's a soul, there's a spirit, there's a body. Yes.
All right.
And not just the human being. We also have other creatures which apparently, depending on the religion you believe in, also have souls and so on and so forth. Yeah. But right now with science, what we're interested in is, can we take the dead and transform them into the living? And the answer is yes, we can. Okay, so let's go through the process. Human being died. You're saying that that's curable. That's not the end. It's not the end at all.
Okay, died, soul gone.
Yes.
Died means soul gone.
Right.
Spirit gone.
Yes.
Body in the mortuary.
Yes.
What happens?
So if we start the process, the reason the soul is gone, the spirit is gone, because the body is no longer active. The body is no longer moving.
The heart has failed.
Everything's failed.
The brain is
And the reason all of that has failed is because to be alive is to be moving at the speed of light. All the cells are moving at the speed of light, and that's why we are alive. So death is a turning off of those cells, is a slowing down of those cells, moving from the speed of life into darkness. So living or resurrection is the returning of the so-called dead cells into light cells at the speed of light. So if we can turn back the darkness into light, the dead cells, so-called, into living cells, the slow cells into faster cells, then what we have is we resurrect the dead. And the dead can be resurrected. We have historical evidence of the resurrection of dead people.
Of Jesus. That's what you're referring to? Of Lazarus.
Jesus. That's right.
Of Lazarus, of Jesus.
That's right.
But that was by spiritual, not scientific.
Well, every single day we do scientific resurrection. I was telling you before how we do it when we take a piece of the dead and then it goes into us. And what happens? If you and I don't eat for 90 days, what happens? We die. And how do we live? We live by absorbing the dead into us and then using the dead to give us life. So what happens is we have the capacity scientifically, and we demonstrate it every day, to transform ourselves from taking pieces of the dead and becoming alive with it.
But that's pieces of the dead.
But
now you're talking about the whole dead body.
But think about it.
Okay, so walk us through the process. From the mortuary, what do? We take the body and put it in the stream.
Okay, so it's not just that simple, but we have to treat it and so on and so forth. So we get back to the stream where there's a living stream. And in that living stream, if you have, okay, the calculations are as follows. The cell of a living thing has to be 100 times out of the dead. So one dead person, in order to resurrect that dead person, you need the weight or the quantities up to about 100 of that same weight. So if it's 100 pounds, you need about 100 times that. So you have a pool.
Let's get it well. So we're doing one dead person. Okay.
Yeah, so that would be 10,000.
Person one.
That's right.
And you say his weight is what?
100 pounds.
100 pounds.
Times 100 times. And that will give you...
Times 100 times?
That's right.
I don't understand that.
Okay, so you have a living pool. The weight of the pool that will raise the dead, which is 100 pounds, has to be 100 times that much.
The weight
That's right.
of the pool.
That's right.
So the person is 100 pounds. You put him in the pool that's 100 times 100.
That's right. And then...
This pool, what's going to be in it?
The pool is going to be made of special cells that move at the speed of light.
Cells?
Right.
Like how?
You know you have cells now. These are all living cells. Everything that is alive is made up of cells that we see it. So it's going to be living tissue, living cells. But we construct it in such a way that it's alive as an organism. But it's not an organism that crashes, that digests like we do. But it's an organism that breathes. It's an organism that is able to absorb.
So like a robot? This stream, like a robot?
No, it's not a robot.
Where are we going to get the cells from to assemble them in that place?
We already have millions and trillions of cells. We just take special concocted cells, we grow them, and they become the living pool. So we grow the cells, we grow the pool.
Okay. Then when you put the human being in the pool, what happens?
Okay, so there'll be a process.
The dead guy.
So there'll be a process just like what happens when the dead enter into our body. They slowly absorb into our system, and then it comes back alive. So what we do is we accelerate the dead through that process that we have already built in that pool. And when the dead is in it, there's a determined period of time, after which time the cells begin to waken from death unto life, from darkness unto light, from slow unto fast. And before you know it, the dead are alive.
I'm not convinced, I have to say. I'm sorry.
Well, you're not convinced because you haven't
understand.
seen it. And you have not convinced because I'm sitting down and talking to you. This is not about talking. It's about processes. And you know, the whole idea, what's very, very important for you to understand, is it can be done. I'm saying to you, human beings have the capacity. The human beings have the capacity, if they do it well, to be able to raise the dead. And we have to take it seriously, because whether we like it or not, it will be done. It can be done, and it should be done. And the whole thing is not to challenge death or God and so on. God has given us that knowledge. What we have to figure out is, how do we start, for example, dead cells, dying cells, weak cells, sick cells? If we can raise the dead, then we can do that.
TV. Life and lifetime. What is it?
All right, so life, light, and time are one and the same. That's just to demonstrate that when you are alive, you're not just light, but you're also time. Time in the sense of presence, constance. And the reason your time is because you move at the speed of light, which is 360,000 kilometers per second.
When you say we move at the speed of light, do you mean we walk at the speed of light?
No, the process is taking place. The reason
internal processes.
Internal processes, even cells moving, calculating, doing so on and so forth. It's very, very fast, extremely fast. And if you don't move at that speed, you cannot be alive. And that's why what happens when we're dying or we're dead is everything breaks down. We're no longer able to move, calculate at the speed of light. And because you can't do that, you start feeling sick, weak, and so on, and you die. To be alive is to move at an extremely fast speed, which is the same at the speed of light. So when they say let there be light, it also means let there be life. And when there's no light, there is death.
Let's look at the slides in quick succession, please, right. And then viewers can follow up. We are talking tonight about, you know, the light. Okay, so this is what
they're all present in space. Presence in space means to be alive is to be present in time and in space. And if you don't move at the speed of light, you cannot be present.
Okay. So they are all present in space. Okay.
Right. So the cells that make up life are photons or moving at the speed of light. That's what I was saying before. They move at 360,000 kilometers per second. Extremely complicated speed.
Cells in our bodies.
That's right.
Okay.
And so you see them like that, but they're life cells, they're light cells. Yes. And so if you don't move at that speed, so when we're dying, we just slow down. Everything's slow. If you could see the picture of a human being alive, young and healthy and vibrant, full of light, an old man, an old woman, dying man, weak woman, you see it's darkness, darkness, darkness. Eventually when we die, or when we are dead, everything is off. It's complete darkness.
I see. That's okay.
So the death is the turning off of the light. It is absence in space. You're absent, not the cells that make up the human being continue to live as electrons. When we're dead, our so-called cells still around. They haven't gone anywhere. We have left. When a human being is alive, it's a photon. Make of light and so on and so forth. When a human being dies, the cells that made up the human being disintegrate and they become electrons. And these electrons can become fertilizer, they move into the system for everything. They're still alive, they're still around, but not in the same form as the photons that made up the human being.
Oh, you mean that, for instance, the decayed body of a human being is still relevant for fertilizer? It's
still alive in a different form for fertilizer. It becomes food for other living things and so on and so forth. It is still around. It hasn't gone anywhere. You know, in energy cannot be destroyed. It's still there, but it's no longer you, because to be you, you have to be connected with different organs and different connections and so on. When you're no longer there, they are there. So you're still around.
So it is the assembly of the various electrons to become a particularly identifiable proton that makes human being.
That's right. You've got it very well. A photon, yes, that becomes a human being. It's the assembly. So that's the whole point about nature. It takes the same thing. If you flip an electron, it becomes a photon. If you flip a photon, it can become an electron. So nature's way of creating a human being is take the same thing, change the direction, it becomes something else. Add this to this, it becomes something else. The dead cells can be turned on by the absorption and stream of life. And that's exactly what I said about when we eat, we absorb the dead. And then because we are alive and because we are strong and because we're moving, we transform the dead into the living.
Wow, this is interesting.
The immersion quickens the dead, absolutely. And the word quickens is very, very interesting because when you read the Bible, I think it's Romans 8 or so on, it talks about quickening the dead. The God who resurrected the Christ will quicken the dead. And if you read the Quran, I think it's Quran chapter 50, it says God quickens the dead. And if you look at, I think John 5:1-4, it says there was a pool in Israel where that pool, every year an angel will come, and then the sick and the weak and the dying will go into that pool, and then the angel would stir up that pool, and whoever went in first, when he was energized, got life.
Including the dead?
I don't know about the dead, but it definitely, whoever went in first, the dying for sure, because it said the withered, which means those close to dying, they got life again. And the point is, when you're able to quicken the dead, because they've slowed down, because they've turned off the lights, they wake up. And we can do it scientifically. Think about it.
That's interesting. Okay.
And being the first to discover it, the resurrection of the dead, is very interesting because we are used to thinking of scientific discoveries as coming from...
The secret of the resurrection of the dead.
That's right. We're used to thinking of scientific discoveries as usually coming from elsewhere. And mostly when Africans discover things, we talk about it in history. We say, oh, we don't know if they did anything. But this is live.
So this is your own discovery?
Absolutely. 2018.
Have you submitted it for some investigation?
I've submitted to so many places, and now we are actually putting together a proposal so we can do fundraising. So we want to build the types, the labs that will start processes, that will start the process of actually doing it, demonstrating. It's going to be a lot of work, a lot of thinking, a lot of collaboration, a lot of money. But let me say this. First of all, I believe there will come a time, maybe 20, 50 years, one day where you're there, dead organs, starting from live cells, whether it's a heart, a liver, and so on and so forth, would be turned back. Dying cells will be regenerated. Dead human beings will be able to come back alive. It is not a dream, it is a reality because we have the process and we show it every day. And so the hope that we give to humanity is that God has given us the wisdom and the processes so that one day death will no longer be the end of man, but a curable end that would be left to desire, choices, policies, and power.
But the Bible says that, and you refer to the Bible, that it's appointed unto man once to die, and after that, judgment.
Right. So when you're dead and you're resurrected, you're not dead yet. So the judgment will come when you finally died. And then
die because you don't want to be resurrected.
Well, some people would not be resurrected because maybe where they died or the amount of money required to do the resurrection would take time and people don't have the money and so on. But hold on, it doesn't change it because the Bible says when the time comes for the resurrection, some people will be alive.
Yes.
So if you're alive because you were resurrected, you'll still be judged. And anyway, God will judge you whether you're dead or alive. And I understand that dead people don't get judged, right? Because to be judged, you have to be awakened. So even the dead to be judged would have to be resurrected by God.
Well, the soul is alive, isn't it?
But then the body, if we talk about resurrection, we're talking about the body, not the soul. Because if the soul is alive, it doesn't need to be resurrected.
Well, there's also another scripture that talks about the dead, where they say that on the last day in the second coming of Christ, the dead in Christ will be resurrected. So
right, so people talk about physical resurrection.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's debatable. We haven't reached there yet. But
the only part about your thesis that's worrying to me is that it doesn't account for the role of the soul.
Well, as we live now, the animals are moving around. We can resurrect the dead, whether they're humans or animals. So what we're interested in at this particular point is how we can resurrect the dead. Now, the soul relates to human beings. I'm not saying that I see the soul. I haven't seen the soul. You haven't seen the soul. The spirit, I haven't seen it. We know, we believe the souls and spirits and so on and so forth. But as to what we're doing, we're only doing a scientific process dealing with the body. Now, when somebody is dead and the soul goes and the spirit goes, and then the person is resurrected, it's just that somebody's in a coma, and then the person comes back again. What happens? The spirit comes back, the soul comes back, because that's what energizes the person to be a person. So if there is a soul and a spirit, then they'll come back to the same person.
Okay, I wanted to find out how your theory relates to the situation in the hospital where these days somebody dies and they put some machines on him and they turn something on and sometimes they come back to life. Well, they are not, the doctors don't say they are dead, but they go through that process and the person is able to talk again, etc. Whether it's kind of similar to what you are advocating. But you also, the point you're making means that the dead person's body must be intact.
Right, absolutely.
So if it's a car crash that's cut off your head, you're gone.
You're gone. And now, but that moves on to the future of science, which says that when you have the cell of a human being, it contains the human being's DNA. It contains the human being's DNA. And when you have that DNA and you freeze it, so in the future, you'll be able to produce a replica of that person from that particular piece. In other words, the fraction of a person contains the details of the totality of the person. So if a person is dead, you get a piece of that person. In the future, you'll be able to duplicate the whole person. But that's far, far off. So when people are crushed, God forbid, in accidents and so on and so forth, if people want to give them a chance of resurrection in the future, then they have to take pieces of them and then freeze them for a long time. And when they're frozen...
But your theory is only relevant for people whose bodies have not been mutilated in a plane crash or a car crash.
For now, yes. But in the future, my theory opens up the door for the resurrection of all kinds of dead things. So in the future, if your body is preserved, then because of the processes of identifying through DNA...
But that means you're bringing the person back to life 20 years after he died.
You can do that 100 years after the person died.
That's scary.
Well, the memory, you have to talk about the memory, how we work on the memory to make sure the person doesn't have, what happened 100 years later.
Yes, how is the person going to connect?
I think there'll be psychologists and psychiatrists and communities and doctors around to deal with that issue. But the point is...
So the person's soul is gone away for such a long time, and then you bring in the person back.
It's not very strange because even the Quran has a story of people being in the cave for decades and then they come back. So when they come back, it's almost as if they were sleeping. If you're sleeping and you wake up, you don't know how long you slept for.
How long will that process take from bringing the person dying and bringing the person back to life? How long will the process take?
So we're looking at hours. Hours, not days, hours.
Hours?
Yeah.
So the person dies now, and in a matter of hours, the person is back.
You remember what I was saying before? It says 100 to 1. Put the person at the speed of light. Everything's going well. Within hours, I don't want to fix the time, but within hours, not days, the person will be back alive.
And back talking?
Well, back alive, and then we work on the talking, the process.
Why do you think it will cost a lot of money to develop the stream?
It's very expensive to create that type of environment where it's clean, it's the scientists, everything has to be perfect in that stream, because think, to have a human being takes a long time, right? By nature, even by nature. So to create a pool that acts as if it was a human being, acts as if it was a living thing, it's going to be a complicated process, but it can be done. And it'll cost money, because to look at it, to make sure to guarantee energy, cleanliness, and to make sure it works perfectly, that costs a lot of money. I don't think we have the money here now in Ghana to do that. But I don't know how many people have the money to be able to assist on that regard.
Well, photograph showing on your right side of the screen is the photographs from the event of Ebony Rain's 1-year anniversary. 1 week anniversary, I should say, that occurred somewhere in Dansoman. Later this weekend, we're expecting a very mammoth funeral here in Accra at the State House, at the forecourt of the State House. Many people, musicians, various information seekers, journalists. You can see there the police having a difficult time on that Sunday afternoon controlling the crowd at the 1 week funeral. You see various people paying their tributes. That's Joy FM's countryman Songo, who had himself been one of the public supporters of Ebony Rains. He was also there to pay his respect. And given what happened at that event, it is expected that this weekend's event could be a very massive one. It could be a mouthful for the police. And we are hoping that Saturday, people who do not have anything relevant to do around the area of the forecourt and who do not want to attend the funeral can use other methods of getting around their business on Saturday morning. This is going to be a really, really big funeral. There is a musical concert that is being arranged by Friends of Ebony Rains, which will occur at the trade fair, I understand, on Friday, tomorrow night. And a sort of vigil will be kept over there as they prepare for the burial on Saturday. This is a very sad event that has occurred in Ghana in 2018. That's Obo, the president of the Musica, himself also a famous musician, attending the event over there. This was all at the school field, the field at the St. Martin de Porres School in Dansoman. Mourners from all walks of life attended the event. And tonight we're in the studio talking about the scientific ways of resurrecting the dead, as we see of Ebony Rains, the famous Ghanaian musician who will be buried this weekend, only 21 years old, a dancehall artist who had captured the attention of many people. There you see the crowd at the 1 week event. Of course, the entire funeral was animated by a musical concert. Many musicians who attended the event had something to say in terms of singing. Abeku Santana, one of the key promoters of Ebony Rains, led the event over there. And there you see musicians. This must be Ebony Rains' producer. They call him Bullet. This must be him talking and addressing the audience at the St. Martin de Porres school field. All of these gentlemen and ladies who are part of the entertainment industry are expected to be there this weekend at the funeral grounds and also at the musical concert. It's a very, very sad event. So, well, our scientists in the studio is saying that in future, some of these deaths can be averted, well, not averted as in prevented, but can be corrected as a disease is corrected.
Yes, it's curable, to use that word. And we shouldn't be worried about the ability of human beings to be able to resurrect the dead, because that will give hope to some people. For example, you have human beings now, some of them have dying hearts, dying lungs, and so on, but they're still alive. And they have to wait for somebody to die before they'll take a piece of the harvest, the heart or the lungs, and so on. It's all tragic. If we have the capacity to be able to reverse death, we don't have to wait for somebody to die before we go harvest and do transplants and so on and so forth. And as for Ebony, although it's very tragic that she passed away, look at the legacy that she's left at 21. She's a megastar. We're talking about her. Sometimes people live to be 100 years, but 100 years of useless life. And someone is 21 years of a legacy, historic proportions. So which is better? To live 100 years and be useless or even harmful to humanity, or to be 21 and to be useful? I think we should not measure life by the length of it, but by the quality and the legacy that she has left for us.
And if our scientific methods were in place, she could have been brought to life?
Absolutely. And I'm sure the fans, the producers, the friends and family will contribute money, no matter how expensive it is, to be able to raise it. And that's the thing about star power, that if there was the process which could reverse the death of Ebony, people will contribute and reverse that process. And if now we want to have an opportunity for her, then a piece of her, maybe her hair, her DNA, should be left intact and perhaps frozen for future purposes.
What can we do with that?
Because when the future comes and science is able to reverse death by duplicating the human being from the human being's part or from the DNA, there has to be a part of her that can be duplicated or resurrected. If she's completely gone because she's been buried, what will be there to replicate or to duplicate?
I'll say that again. So if we take her hair or her fingernails or some body part and we freeze it, what happens?
When the process is ready and active and is able to resurrect the dead,
which might be 10 years after she died,
100 years after she dies, if we can do it, then a piece of ebony will be used in the process.
To do what?
To wake her up.
But the other body would have decomposed.
But that's what I was saying to you before now. If you look at the DNA of a human being, a part of you can be used to duplicate the entire, it's just a question of assembly, it's just multiplication and assembly. So my cells and my leg are the same as the ones in my heart. And the ones in my heart are the same ones in my lungs, and the same ones the one in my head, and so on and so forth. We're just packaging. So if you take one of me and you're able to multiply it, and if you know how to assemble it in such a way, you're able to create my heart, my lung, my legs, my eyes, my ears, my nose, my hair, my everything, and then you can have the whole of me. From a part, you can create the whole.
No, I'm still confused about that.
Don't be confused.
Okay, so that process, you take some cells of a man, freeze it, 100 years. You can recreate Winston Churchill, for instance.
Yes.
What about the brain? What about the attributes? What about the disposition?
That's the thing. I was talking before about memory. How do you create the memory of the person?
Yeah.
We'll find a way. Look, nothing is impossible. We just have to think about it. You're posing these questions.
But the soul.
You're back to the soul.
Yeah.
So assuming the soul is in heaven somewhere, 100 years, and the human being is alive, what happens? The soul come back to the human being. If the soul is connected permanently to the body, if the soul is connected permanently, and the body is alive, then the soul has no choice but to join the body.
From wherever the soul might be.
Right, because it has to drive that body. But if it is not connected, and it can go wherever it wants.
Into another body.
Into another body. Then the question is, who would drive that body? And that I don't know the answer to.
What you know is that the simple equation of dead cells finding themselves into a living stream of living cells.
Right.
That those living cells can quick start the dead cells and bring them to life again.
Perfect.
That's just a simple equation
that
you're championing.
That's right.
And you say that this equation should apply to a human being who is dead.
Yes.
Because when a human being dies, the soul doesn't die. It is the cells in the body that have shut down.
That's right.
And those cells can be resurrected.
Right.
And you're anticipating that once they are resurrected, the soul can come back into the body.
Yes.
And continue to live.
And the whole thing is, how wonderful it is to sit down in 2018 to think of the possibility of the human being being able to resurrect the whole human being from a process which we see every single day, which is a process of absorption of the dead into the living and the living waking up. So if you and I did not eat, we will be dead. And then what does the dead...
But we don't only eat living organisms. We eat fruits. That's not living. We eat...
Fruits are living. Who said fruits are not living? They're living. The vegetables, they're all living. Everything that you eat is
we eat them, they die.
they're dead before we eat them. When we pluck it from the tree or from wherever, we cut into
them.
pieces, we grind them, we blend them, we boil them, we bake them. What happens to them? And then we eat them. And what happens? Our body is able to transform these so-called dead things into life. This cell, your cell, what is it? This is, the cells change.
So when you
every
cut off
90
a vegetable, a cabbage from the stem, you've killed it.
You have killed it. And when you chew it, it is not alive. And when you fry it, bake it, boil it, it's not alive, it's dead. And yet, it is not dead. It's just transformed from the photonic state into the electronic state, the electron state. And when you eat it, your body reactivates it, quickens it. And before you know, the so-called dead is you. You are chicken, cow, goats, fish, everything. The same with me, the same with everyone here. And it's the dead that makes us who we are. So we are not really living, we are dead, but we're not dead, we are living.
We are not living, we are dead, but we're not dead.
And I'm saying that because I'm just trying to say that what you are as living, composed of the dead, is the dead that makes you alive.
It's the things that have died.
Right.
That have kept you alive.
That's right. And how did they keep you alive? Because when it enter, it's like a fire. There's a living fire in you. And that living fire is never allowed to go off. It doesn't go off because the so-called dead things are the fire. They're the things that fuel the fire. And as long as you're able to absorb them into yourself, you're alive. When you stop absorbing them, the fire goes off and you die. So the dead, when they enter you, give you life. They are alive. You are alive.
So if you can create a stream of putting the entire body in there.
Right. Then, same process, same logic. And that's how science advances. Possibilities exist by looking at what works and saying the same process must be applied.
It's kind of interesting, you know, looking at how death is, as they say, death is a thief of joy.
Yeah.
In many families when people die, if there was a cure for death, perhaps there would have been. But man has condemned himself to the fact that death has no cure, and it's an ultimate end that comes up sometimes in the hospital, sometimes at home. And many religions sort of, you know, religious dogma sort of holds this principle at the center of it. How are we going to even talk to people to think of a possibility of resurrecting from the dead? I mean, I know that when malaria started, there was no cure for malaria.
Right.
And everyone knew that when you contract malaria, you're dead.
Yes.
50 years later, there's a cure for malaria. Even HIV/AIDS, now we're hearing there could be a cure for HIV/AIDS. So you're landing the real big elephant in the room that even the death, I can cure it.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. And see, I'm smiling, and it is a possibility for human beings. And we have the possibility not only to reverse sicknesses and so on and so forth, which seemed impossible years ago, but to reverse death. Death is not the end of man. The end of man is really God saying enough. That's the end of man. But the end of man is not falling sick. And what happens when we fall sick and we die is the things have fallen apart. The system cannot hold. The glues have fallen. The speed can no longer be maintained. But when we are able to reverse the processes, then we come back to life. So when we are alive, essentially what it is life forms moving around, glued together and networks. And then it just turned off. It's like your phone. Your phone gets turned off. You need to charge it. The human being will be recharged.
Except if his body is mutilated by a car crash, like some of Ebony's friends, the two others.
Yes.
Especially the military soldier.
Yes.
Or when you have a plane crash, that you can't do anything about.
Right.
Is that not a setback to your theory?
Yeah. It's not a setback at all, because accidents account for only a small, minute percentage of the people that die. Hundreds of millions of people die in hospitals and in their homes and so on and so forth. So if we cannot resurrect the crushed and the maimed and so on, we can at least do something for those who don't.
Under your theory, when a person dies at 90 and he's weak and you're bringing him back to life, is he coming back looking like the 90-year-old or is coming back looking at the 30-year-old?
Now, think about it though, to answer your question. You see, what we're saying is the dead can, so essentially, if we can take the dead into the living, we can actually create life ab initio. You see that? Because if it is electrons that get transformed.
But the body size of the person is not a baby body size.
No.
It's an adult.
That's right.
Okay. So 90-year-old frail woman will be brought back to life looking like what?
It depends on what we decide to do. We now become fashioners of bodies, fashioners of life. We can create life. So we decided down to what kind of photonic stream would we want to have? How many fresh cells we want to produce in this person? Which part of the organ would we want to address with how many cells? We sit down, we actually do, just like you're building a car. We can build human beings in that same sense as scientists. So as we're doing it, we have to figure out this 90-year-old, do we want her to come as 16-year-old, 90-year-old, 45-year-old, or what? And whatever we decide, the processes will allow us to do that. It's a brave new world.
That's interesting, and so soon we've been talking for that long. I didn't know that. It's nearly 10 o'clock on our clock here. In the next few minutes, we will be. Let me go to the text messages and see what we have and what people are saying. Malaria is treated, not cured. Somebody says. Yeah, I'm disagreeing with you. I think it says malaria is treated, it's not cured. Prince says. There's a. I'm looking for text messages for today. Okay. Mr. Sapon says, what about memory? Assuming you resurrect the dead, will the resurrected be conscious of herself? If Ebony is resurrected, will she know she's Ebony? That's a question for you.
Right. If you're able to resurrect the same cells that form the memory, then she'll have the same memory. And memory is spread throughout the body. It's not just in the brain. There's a whole set of networks and so on and so forth. But if you're not able to resurrect the same cells that form the memory, then no, she won't have the memory.
That's your theory proposed to resurrect the same cells?
That's right, absolutely. We're resurrecting everything about the person, not just...
So if it's Ebony, she will know that I was in a car and I got an accident.
Right. Well,
and I died.
Well, if she captured it before she died, because sometimes when people are having accidents and so on and so forth...
They don't capture it?
I don't think so. Because when people are traumatic, sometimes they blank out before they die, or they blank out before the impact. It happens that some people don't remember what happens to them immediately before they die, or immediately before there's a serious injury. So I don't know what memory she will have of that particular incident. But the question, will she know she's Ebony? Of course, if the memories are there, she will know she's Ebony.
Will the soul not know? Is memory part of the soul or is part of the body?
It's part of the body.
Memory? It's part of the body?
Yes, it's part of the soul.
So when you die, the memory dies?
Yeah.
You don't remember?
Yeah. When you're dead, you're dead. Except the soul. You see, the soul is spiritual. The soul is not part of physics or biology and so on. It's spiritual. But
so you really don't know? Because the soul is spiritual, you don't know?
No, I know the body dies and the memory dies, but whether the soul has copied it, the relation between the soul is not defined by us in science, as you know. It's religious. So how does the soul relate to the body?
Well, but in the stories that Jesus Christ told in the Bible, the Christian Bible, there was this man who died and who was in hell, and he clearly remembered.
Right. That's because if the body is gone, the memory he has, we have two ways of memorizing something. Either he has a direct memory or he's copied the memory. So it's the memory of what happened. So you can think of the soul as following the body or as beside the body or in the body, taking pictures, recording and so on and so forth. I'm not saying
I understand.
Yeah. And so when the body dies, it just goes. It has all that memory captured. It could be a shadow, a double.
Disc.
Well, I don't know how it stores this memory. Okay. I've never seen a soul before.
Abubakar says that this guy is living in an illusion world. Trust me, when you die, you are gone, and the soul shall return to its maker, who breathed life into you. This theory shall forever remain a stark theory and never a reality. Shalom, he says. Esther Ajwa Sewa Aka says, it is appointed unto man to die once, and after that, judgment. Abdul Malik Ali says, because even common blood clots can't go back to its original state. Kobe says, our understanding is truly the limitation of what we know or what we think could be. All proven theories were once reproached, so I think there could be a possibility of what your guest is saying. Kellington IB says, this man is not making sense at all. James McKeown says, Paul, please ask him when will people who have died many years ago be resurrected. I think we've dealt with that. Prince Ajay Frimpong said, it is a good discussion and it just adds substance to academic fraternity. It seems impossible, but it's actually a very good start. Haj Motala says, you know we don't have the money to do it. That is why you are dreaming the impossible, and you know you will not be alive to that dream possible. Then blame the lack of money. Well, I don't quite get it, but anyway. Nimanche Nunu says, good evening, Paul. Ask your guest Where does science sit in the matters of spirituality? Resurrection, as much as I know, isn't the same earthly body that one had that will be resurrected. I think the day of resurrection isn't the normal human days. It will be a supernatural day which wouldn't be controlled by science, but by God. Nothing is impossible on this earth. It's just a matter of time and determination. And Adam-Otchere says, this chap is talking sense. Everything possible under the sun. Paul is confused, but can't say it's Charlie. Let him know he's not making sense. Okay. So looks like people have enjoyed the program. Somebody says, I once had a conversation with another professor, but he said eyes play a significant part of preserving life and at some scientific process, and it's a proven method according to him. You know, something similar to what you are saying. Yeah. So, so yes, that's the comments coming from people. Similar apprehensions, but some are quite interested, at least in the effort that you have put in to sort of bring this discussion to us. Where do we go from here, Nana Sapo? Nana Opon, where do we go from here?
We have to get a team together, and then we have to have a timetable and raise the funds and start. We have to start with dealing with organs.
Mm-hmm.
And then from the organs, we can deal with small animals and take it from there.
You want us to try the animals first?
Yeah.
Okay, so you shoot a dog and then you put him through the process?
Well, we don't have to shoot a dog. We can just take dead dogs and to go through the process. They die, plenty of them around, dying, dead, and so on. So we just take the dead ones and then go through the process.
Prince Frimpong says, in the advanced world, people would have applauded him for starting something great, even if it seems impossible. We must think outside the box. Black people, he says, let's think outside the box. Anyway, yeah. So I was asking, where do we go from here?
Yeah, I said we have to get a team together and then start the process. We give ourselves time and get the resources, and we're able to do it. It is not impossible at all. It's not impossible. And it has nothing to do with religion. Religion is there. We have our belief. I believe in the Most High God. I believe in the judgment. I believe that it's appointed for man to be alive and to die. But whether you are born and you die, you get resurrected, it's like being in a coma and getting another chance and another chance. That one, the scriptures don't say. You understand? Look, when there was Lazarus. He died. And what happened? Jesus woke him up.
Spiritually?
No, I don't think it's spiritually. Jesus was the powerful power of God on earth. And he said, Lazarus, it was a physical act of Jesus. It wasn't, we didn't see any magic from the air, some altar.
No, he spoke the words. He said, Lazarus, rise up.
It was a word of power. And so whether that word is physics, transformed, because Jesus was on the earth, I don't know. All I know is physically he woke him up. He said, Lazarus, it was a powerful prayer. It was very call. And he woke up. And there's a story of Elisha's bones touching the dead person.
Yes.
Yeah, and the person woke up. So why are you saying about those people? They died years ago. Who knows how long they died? But they woke up. So
they didn't wake up. It's the bones that the power in Elijah's bones woke up another person. Elijah himself didn't come.
No, I'm just saying the person woke up. Yeah. So what happened to the soul and the spirit? Answer your question.
The person who was dead, they were going to bury him.
Yeah, what happened to the cells? Sorry, the soul and the spirit. Where did
the power, the spiritual power of Elijah's bones.
Right, I'm answering your question. Where was the soul? Where was the spirit of that person? It came back, isn't it?
Yeah, it came back, yes.
Yeah, so that answers your question. When a person is resurrected, wherever the soul or spirit may be, it can come back. Look, these people saying they have a problem with me and this guy saying so on. Look, it's science. It is not based on wishes. We're going to test it. If it is true, it is proven. If it's not true, it's not proven. It's not a question of we like it, we don't like it. If it is true, it's going to happen.
Okay, Lawrence says that he's making sense. Physicists with quantum background will appreciate his theory. Even speech spoken into thin air can be retrieved later on scientifically, but in real life, his theory can't work. There's a natural phenomenon factor that is hidden from man. Only God can do it. Gio says it's not about whether a person can be brought back to life or not. His thinking is apt and extremely logical. We should learn how to listen. That is our problem. We talk more than we listen. The guy is saying something. Instead of us listening, we are all condemning him. Akosua Boajoa says, when a person is dead, the soul leaves the body. Where will he get the soul to put it back in the body? Okay, that question has also been answered. I think that we've had food for thought tonight to look at. And so, Nana Sapong.
Is that all, Paul?
Nana Opon, sorry about that. Nana Opon, we have to leave it here. But, I mean, from our side as a television program, we appreciate your thinking and your thoughts, and we'll be happy to give you another platform if you tell us that you've taken you've moved one step further. We'll be back here to think about it. We wanted to connect you to the Ebony event so that the graphic sort of thing can come out to people.
Yeah.
And we are very disappointed about the death of Ebony. Yeah. But as fate will have it, this weekend she will be buried, and the rest, as they say, would be history. Thanks for watching, and if you can make it to the Ebony Rain's musical concert tomorrow, do. If you can make it to the funeral, do. But if you don't want to be there, please make it easier for the police to control what we're expecting to be a real mammoth crowd. Thanks for watching and good night.